Hello there, this is Sean Usher, and I'm very pleased to welcome to the Skype call Dr. Helen Roberts, who is all the way over there in Kenya at the Kwale District Eye Centre, which is something she set up back in 1993. So, Helen, it's been difficult to get hold of you because of the infrastructure of Skype and so on and so forth, but we finally got you on the call. We're so pleased to finally meet up virtually.
Yes, I feel as if I've left my aeroplane behind, but here we are.
Yeah, you can call you Biggles. Can I call you Biggles now?
Yeah, by all means.
So what are you doing an English girl over there in Kenya? How come you got to Kenya?
Jolly good question, really. I mean, what am I doing? No, okay. I came over here as a medical student and realised that there was an enormous amount of blindness in Kenya, and no one was doing very much about it. And I fell in love with the place, and I fell in love with the Kenyan. I went back to Britain, and 6 years later, I emigrated out to Kenya, having qualified as an ophthalmologist.
Well, I'm glad
and basically
you said
started.
It's a hard word to say.
Try spelling it. I started up in Nairobi to try and get some Kenyan experience of eye surgery, really, because it is quite different. And then had to move down to the coast and try to get a job, and really found it very difficult because members of the Kenyan medical profession were a little upset by the fact that I was qualified and female, and I was suggested that I should go back and look after my husband. Anyway, so the solution was clearly to open somewhere where there was most need and no services, and that was very true of the south coast of Kenya, which is incredibly poor. And the rate of blindness was 1 in 100 people when I started 20 years ago. And the main reason for that is that people can't reach affordable, accessible eye care. It simply doesn't exist, and if it does, they can't reach it. They can't get there. So any small services that were set up weren't reaching people at all. So we started literally with a mud hut back in 1993 in a pretty rural location. And I couldn't understand why we were dealing with a population of about 1 million. And if you think 1% of that were totally blind in both eyes, 3 times that had a problem in one eye, and another 10 times had problems with the eyes but weren't necessarily affecting their eyesight to that level. So there's a huge volume of blindness. And I knew that there would be hundreds of thousands of people outside the front door on day one because, of course, I'd found the solution, which is that you have to provide accessible care that people can afford when they get there. And there was no one outside the front door. And I realised very quickly that I'd got it wrong. And you can do that in Britain, but in Africa you can't just set up a clinic and expect people to reach you because they can't. So what we then did was started a community-based programme. And this is what makes us really a little bit different. We call ourselves the Eye Centre with the Difference. And in order to find the people who really need us, we have to go out and find them instead of waiting for them to come to us. And so 3 or 4 times a week we go out with a vehicle and we meet a bunch of people, usually 100 people or so, gathered under a tree or in a clinic or in a school, and they've been gathered by what we call our community-based workers. So we have 8 of these in a district of about 8,000 square kilometres, and those people are known as the eye people in the bush in that area. Anyone with an eye problem will go to them. They will go around the little health centres there. They'll talk to the village health leaders, the women's groups, and more recently the schools, and explain what you should do if you have an eye problem, what to do with somebody if they can't see. And so we break down some of the barriers that stop people reaching us. You can't break down them all that way. I mean, that's one of them. That's a significant one. But there have been some other very interesting ones. For example, people will always go to the witch doctor first because that's what they've done for generations. Yeah. And so off they'll go. So we teach the witch doctors what to do if they've got problems, or what to do if they come across somebody with problems, and invite them on board. And we bring them back to the eye centre. They do want to see the eye centre. Yeah.
Do you encourage them to learn more about like the cure for it on the nutrition side of things? Because that's obviously a big problem for them out there.
Yes, and you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, when we started here 20 years ago, one of the most common causes for blindness in children was vitamin A deficiency. And that's simply because the child, who was often living on a farm in which there were vitamin A growing plentifully around them, in the mango above their tree, in the trees above them, And basically what you have to overcome here is lack of knowledge. So the community-based program, and through all the local village leaders, etc., and working very closely with everybody else in the area and the government, we need to increase the knowledge of a basic balanced diet. And we used to see blindness from vitamin A deficiency in young children, and this, honestly, we hardly see anymore. So, you know, somebody's making some progress. I'm not suggesting it's us. It's very much a teamwork with everybody out there. But as people become more aware, then they have less reasons to go blind preventably.
Okay. Tell us a bit about the centre itself. I mean, how many staff do you have? I believe you started with 4 or something, was it?
Yes, back in 20 years, well, it was 20 years ago last week, in fact. We started, it was almost literally a mud hut with no running water. I had to carry the water down myself, and very, very basic equipment. And it's grown from 4 staff members to 42 staff members now. And a lot of those people are out in the field most of the time. So if you come to the eye centre, beautiful as it is, because it's now evolved into a large building with a low vision department and an operating theatre department and an outpatient and etc. It's quite a sizable clinic now. You'll only see part of what's going on. So much of it's actually going on in the community. Even 20 years later, we're still having to work in the community in order to reach people, mostly because of the poverty.
Is it a free service, Helen?
No, and you've got to be very careful with free services. They can be quite a bane.
Right.
We often do cataract surgery without charging the patient, but we then ask them to pay for drops. We explain to them, we've learnt the hard way, we explain to them that someone else has had to pay for their cataract surgery. And, you know, we did begin doing things for free fairly frequently in the beginning, and we still do camps where we acknowledge that people can't pay anything. We get a sponsor to pay for it. But part of the education is enabling the patient to know that someone's paid for it, and preferably who. Because you can't do anything for free. At least you can, but you'll have a closed hospital a few years down the line. And when we were small and when we had begun, and 20 years ago the economic climate was different, and we had a lot of donors coming on board very gradually. And then suddenly one large donor completes the cycle of funding and decides to take the funding to the government services. So there we are with quite a large hole in the income. And you have to provide for this. You have to be able to continue the eye centre when the donors decide to change their policy and pull out. So you've got to be able to support yourself. You've got to have programs, lots of different approaches to funding. So the patients generally pay. Anybody coming to the clinic has to pay.
But these are very poor people, though. I mean, how do they pay?
Well, often it's a mango or a few chickens,
Right.
and a lot of the time it is small amounts. You know, it'll be 200 shillings for a consultation, 200 shillings for a bottle of drops, so that's about £1.50.
Right.
And these people have a lot of children, and what's happening now is more and more these children are doing well, and they are getting some form of income. So it is becoming less of a cash-free society than it was. It is evolving, but you know, we'll take a couple of mangoes or a chicken if that's all you've got.
Yeah. But nowadays, I mean, is it like we've got the economic problems back here in the UK? Obviously, is it the same over there?
No, we haven't been hit in the same way that you have, but then we weren't as rich as you were, and we weren't borrowing as much as you were either. Kenyan laws on borrowing have always been very careful. But the level of poverty here is quite shocking. I mean, you know I'm sitting in a smart house now, but if you go out a few kilometres into the bush, you will find people with no running water, no drinking water, living in a mud hut. Free schooling came in 11 years ago, but before that there were very few children reaching any form of education, and the level of education is free at primary only, so most people then drop out after primary school. They don't get a secondary education, and it's still a very poor society.
Is the centre self-sufficient now? Because you're paying for, obviously you're getting stuff paid for, the treatment paid for. Is it self-sufficient?
No, I don't think it ever will be. I mean, you can run a clinic that is self-sufficient if you only deal with people who are able to pay. If you want to reach people who really need you, and they will be poor and they will be miles away, they will be marginalised. And in order to reach them, you've got to raise funds from the people who can afford to pay or from people who are willing to pay to help these folk.
Okay, so how do you raise funds then?
We basically... we use Christoffel Blinden Mission, who've been on board since 1996, but the funds are reducing all the time. We have an internet website where we ask people to donate, go on board and donate. We have a lot of varied supporters, a lot of Rotary clubs across the world, not just Kenya, but also Britain, Germany, France, are interested in helping people and adding to the infrastructure so the eye centre can continue the services. Then we get individuals. We have some trusts who've been set up for this purpose. I have a lovely lady who's a medium by profession, and we got to know each other over the email and eventually met. And she does some sessions for people, and she takes donations from her patients, if that's the right word for them, and they knowingly give so that somebody can see. And I'll send her back photographs of the people that her patients have actually paid to enable them to see. It's the greatest gift that you can give, I think.
Okay.
These people have often been blind for years, so...
Right. I'm going to talk about the how people can actually contribute shortly. But tell me a bit about your personal life, if you don't mind, because you got an MBE about 10 years ago, but you've been living out there in Kenya for such a long time that people who are working abroad don't often get offered an MBE, I don't think.
Yeah. Well, no, and not unless they're in the Foreign Service. Yes, I thought it was rather touching that, in obscure rural Kenya, somebody had noticed that there was a whole load of work going on. Yes, it was delightful, really. I shouldn't have got it. I think the staff and the committee and all the supporters should have got it, really. But somebody had to go and receive it, I suppose. It was delightful.
But you married a Kenyan, and I believe you got some children as well. Is that right?
That's correct. They're both Kenyan and British.
Right.
So they're actually pretty much Kenyan.
Right. Yeah. Are they living
they're
with
experiencing Britain for the first time now.
Are they living there in Kenya?
No, they're back in Britain now. They've just left for school.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
So have they adopted the same attitude like this charitable attitude obviously you've got in their lives too? Is that something they've grown up with?
No, absolutely no sign of that in a 16 or 17-year-old. I'd like to meet one who does.
That's true, I suppose.
And they've been brought up with a healthy respect for money or lack thereof. No, I think they'll all be merchant bankers, I hope.
And they can give you more donations. Let's talk about donations.
Exactly. Much better position.
Let's talk about donations. What do you need right now? I mean, can anybody sort of if you were to get a magic wand out and say, I need this, what would it be?
Well, of course, it's running costs. I mean, that's the big challenge. And that breaks down into staff salaries and electricity and intraocular lenses for cataracts, etc. But what we do ask for is people to contribute towards actually restoring sight, because it's such fun and so it's such a good use of money. So we ask people to pay towards cataract surgery itself, and that costs, well, it's difficult to know exactly. It depends what you count. We reckon it at about 8,000 shillings, which is about $100 per eye to do. Depends whether you count rebuilding the operating theatre and training the surgeon and all the running around in the bush around it. So it is a difficult figure to reach. So that's certainly something. Then there's a list of equipment that we want. The challenge with equipment, of course, is it tends to be expensive in ophthalmology. It tends to be one large piece of equipment. We're off to the Rotary clubs asking to help us again with sterilisers to make sure the instruments are safe in theatre. And the challenge of Kenya is often that these sophisticated instruments break. We have a laser machine which was used for blowing holes in the capsule in the eye after cataract surgery, and that's just gone, no thanks, I'm not living any longer. And the replacement of that is going to be quite a challenge.
Right.
But, we can access used equipment and that sort of thing. It doesn't need to be brand new. It's just the challenge of keeping it going in Kenya is another.
Okay, well, give us a plug for your website so we can find out where the donation page is. Please.
Yes, please, get on the website. eyesforeastafrica.org is the website, or .com, we don't really mind, we have both. Right. Get on and have a look at what we do, and if you want to contribute, then look at the choice of options. We've got an iGive section, EYE Give section, which gives you a few choices. If you don't want to contribute to cataract or a child to be able to see again, you can buy a goat or a white cane, or if you've got a smaller amount, then a pair of reading glasses. Yeah. I mean, I think the point is that it does take a lot to run this eye centre, but every little donation helps.
Well, it's taken a while to actually get you on the line, Helen. I'm very pleased that I have been able to, so that we can learn more about the eye centre. So thank you very much for that. And I'll be putting up the links to your website on the video so that people can see it, and also a link in our blog post for our website. So thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I'm very chuffed to meet you online one day in the flesh, we hope.
Well, I hope when you come over you can. You've got beautiful sunshine there, I've got to say.
Yes, I was showing off just a little. I'm getting slightly burned, but you realise that I'm just making the point. If you'd like to come to Kenya, there's a few nice things to see when you get here.